Okay, so we are back. We haven't taken a video in a long time because I usually take videos on my phone and it just doesn't work for some reason. So we're back here in another video, and today we are going to be learning about some of the saints. It's hard for, I want Julian's objective here for his class is to give a brief explanation of, so he's supposed to choose a saint, pick one. He's supposed to explain that saint's life and describe why they chose that particular saint. And so I am giving Julian about 4 different options here. So we're going to learn about each different saint first, and then he's going to pick that based off of which one he likes best, and then kind of go more into depth about learning about their life. But with each saint, I have a video, and I'm going to ask questions of the video, and he's going to just kind of go off of that. I'm on www.catholic.org, and each saint has like its own like video that like is a good overview. So we're going to be watching each and every one of those, and I'm going to be asking him questions, and we're just going to interact. And so first I want you to start spelling the 4 saints that I've picked, and that is Saint Peter, Saint Joan of Arc, Saint Paul, and Saint John the Apostle. So we're going to start by Saint Peter. So spell Saint Peter for me. Ready, go. Yep, S-A-I-N-T, Peter. Get it? Yeah, P-E-T. Straight to it. E. Yep, Saint Peter. We have Saint Joan of Arc. Saint Joan of Arc is spelled J-O-A-N-O-F-A-R-C. So Saint, straight to it, S-A-I-N, Saint. Get that. It's so hard. J's are very hard for him. God. Yeah, J, Joan, O-A, Joan of A-R, get it. C, yeah, Saint Joan of Arc. Saint Paul. S-A-I-N, Saint Paul. Get it. P-A-U-L. Who we might even learn later on his original name was Saul, but his name got changed to Paul, and then now we have Saint John the Apostle. Ready, go. S-A-I-N, Saint, get that J, J-O-H, John, the good Apostle, A-P-O-S-T-L. Okay, yeah, Saint John the Apostle. Alright, so our first video is about Saint Peter. Look here, Julian.
Saint Peter is the first pope of the Catholic Church, and there remains an unbroken line of popes from Saint Peter to Saint Francis. Though Saint Peter's birth date remains uncertain, he is believed to have died in 64 AD. Saint Peter is the patron saint of fishermen, netmakers, and shipbuilders. He was canonized by Christ as the Rock of the Church, described in Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. His feast day is June 29th. However, several groups honor him on February 22nd and November 18th as well. St. Peter was born Simon Peter of Cephas. He was a fisherman who was at sea with his brother Andrew, and as they struggled to catch fish, Jesus took notice of them. Jesus told the brothers to cast their nets into deep water and that he would fill them. Peter and his brother did as they were told, and sure enough, they caught so many fish the thick rope nets began to tear. By the time the fish had been loosed on board, the boats were nearly sinking. When Simon Peter realized what happened, he admitted he was a sinful man, and Jesus told him, "From now on, it is people you will be catching." Simon Peter became one of Jesus' disciples that very day and was called Peter from then on. Following Christ's death, it was Peter who denied knowing Jesus 3 times before a rooster crowed twice, and, following the resurrection, Jesus gave Peter 3 chances to make up for the denials by asking him if he loved him. Each time Peter responded that he did love Jesus, and so he was resolved of his guilt. There are several stories of Peter's accomplishments following Jesus' ascension, including the story of how he escaped King Herod with help from an angel, helped spread the gospel to Gentiles, and baptized people. When he was finally captured, Peter was put to death for his good deeds. When he was to be crucified, Peter admitted he was not worthy of dying the same way Jesus did, and was therefore crucified upside down. Following his death, Peter was buried on Vatican Hill, where Emperor Constantine I honored him with a large basilica. In 1950, bone shards were discovered, and Pope Paul VI announced they belonged to Peter. On November 24, 2013, Pope Francis revealed the relics of 9 bone fragments for the first time in public during a mass celebrated at St. Peter's Square. Artwork featuring St. Peter often depicts him as an elderly man holding a key and book, though his symbols also include an inverted cross, a boat, and a rooster. To learn more about St. Peter, visit Catholic.org.
Okay, so little overview about Peter. So he was the what pope? He was, so let's say St. Peter was the blank pope, fill in the blank. Saint, S-A-I-N-T, yes, Saint, yes, P-E, straight to it, T, get it, E-R, get it, St. Peter, yeah, W-A, get it, S, slow down just a little bit, was, yeah, T-H-E, the what pope, F-I, get it, R, yeah, he was the first P. Oh. P. Yeah, he was the first pope. So, St. Peter was the first pope, and Christ described him as the rock of the church. Spell rock of the church. R-O-C, rock, O-F-T, the, get it, C-H-U-R-C-H, yeah, rock of the church. And so, what was Peter? Peter was a what? What did he do as a work? What was he? He was a what? F, get it, I, S, E, R, M, A, straight to it, slow down. Yeah, fisherman. So Peter was a fisherman, and him and his brother once were out on the lake, and they were trying to fish, and they were tossing their nets in, bringing them back. They weren't catching any fish, right? And then Jesus said to cast their nets on the other side of the boat. You know, what is that going to do? If you're in a big lake, what is the other side of the boat going to do? But they listened to Jesus, and they said, and when they went to go pull these nets back in, they had so much fish in there that the nets were tearing. And Jesus called Peter to be a fisher. And that day, he told Peter that he was going to be a fisher of men. Not just a fisherman, not just catching fish. You like that, huh? It's cool. He wants him to be a fisher of men, as in catching people, spreading the gospel, fishing people in for Jesus, bringing them in so that they can be saved and that they can have that relationship with God. And so, how many times did Peter deny Christ when it came down to Jesus' death? How many times? Ooh, let me do the number board first. Yeah, you are right. 3. Spell that for me. T-H, straight to it. R-E-E. Yeah, 3. So he denied Jesus 3 different times. And in order for him to all he had to do for forgiveness after denying God so many times, 3 different times, he's not real, he's not the Messiah, this and that. All he had to say for Jesus to forgive him was saying that he loved him. And so, and why was he, when it came down to Peter's death, he was crucified upside down. Why was he crucified upside down? He, W, okay, A, okay, he wasn't what? Okay, worthy, okay, of, D, straight to it, Y, I, O, dying, L-I-K, okay, yeah, like, what? Straight to it. Dying like, okay, J, E, S, U. Good. He wasn't worthy dying like Jesus. That was good. He wasn't worthy dying like Jesus. You're right. All right, now we're going to learn about Joan of Arc. We'll learn about her now.
Saint Joan of Arc was born in 1412 and died in 1431 at the age of 19. She was beatified in 1909 and canonized by Pope Benedict XV in 1920. She is the patroness of soldiers in France, and her feast day is May 30th. Joan was born a peasant, but was said to have heard the voices of St. Michael, St. Catherine, and St. Margaret from a young age. When she turned 13, the 3 saints appeared to her in a vision and told her to drive the English from conquered French territory. They also asked that she bring the Dauphin to Reims for his coronation, then vanished. Following their departure, Joan wept, for they were so beautiful. When she was 16 years old, Joan traveled with a relative to Vaucouleurs, where she petitioned garrison commander Robert de Baudricourt for permission to visit the French royal court in Chinon. After Baudricourt dismissed her with a sarcastic response, she returned the following January and departed with 2 of Baudricourt's soldiers, John de Metz and Bertrand de Poulengy. After a second meeting with Baudricourt, Joan predicted a military reversal at the Battle of Rouvray near Orleans, and when a messenger reported the reversal several days later, Baudricourt began to believe Joan had seen through divine revelation. She was then granted an escort through hostile Burgundian territory and was advised to dress as a man for her safety. After meeting with Charles VII in the royal court, she was granted permission to join the ranks of soldiers in Orleans, where her presence allowed the French to reclaim much of the territory lost to the English. Following the military victories, Joan and her family were ennobled by Charles VII, and a truce with England was proclaimed. Unfortunately, the truce was broken not long after its establishment, and Joan returned to the field, where she was captured by Burgundian troops, who held her at a ransom of 10,000 gold coins. She was then sold to the English, and was tried as a cross-dressing witch and heretic in a trial that violated the legal process of the time. Many members of the tribunal, as well as the Vice Inquisitor, were threatened with their lives should they choose to do what was right for Joan, so she was eventually condemned to death at the stake. Following her death, witnesses described how her body was burned a second and third time. Once her body was reduced to ashes, authorities were satisfied no relics could be salvaged, and the ashes were thrown into the Seine River. 21 years later, Joan's mother and the Inquisitor General Jean Brihal requested a nullification trial, which led to the declaration of Joan's innocence on July 7, 1456. Joan of Arc is often depicted with short hair and wearing battle armor. She is usually holding a banner, as she did during each battle she participated in, and has been mentioned in several written works by famous writers, such as William Shakespeare and Voltaire. To learn more about St. Joan, visit Catholic.org, and if
Okay. So there's a lot of history involved with Joan d'Arc between the French and the British, fighting back territories, and just during that time they were at war a lot with one another. But what's really cool about Joan d'Arc is that she was just very sure in her purpose. Like, she did not deny that it was her purpose to be a soldier one day, and for her to fight for the French. And so she had three saints. One of them was Saint Michael, I know for sure. I forget the other two that she witnessed. And they came to her in a what? How did these three saints talk to her? In a what? V-I-S, straight to it, I-O. Yeah, so they came to her in a vision, and they told her in this vision that she were to lead the French army into gaining back the territory from the English. So, Joan, say Joan, get it, J-O, straight to it, A, Joan was, W, to lead, to, good, L-E-A, lead, get it, what army was it? Where was she from? Yes, F-R, straight to it, E-N, get it, C, the French, straight to it, A-R-M. Yeah, so Joan was to lead the French army. That was the vision. And so what's cool is by the time she had been leading the French army, she had this vision when she was like 13 years old, was starting to lead the army at 16 years old. And then how old was she when she died? No. How old was she? One. She was, get it? No. Yes. He kept saying 18, but she was 19. She was 19 when she died. What a young life, but she did a lot, even at such a young age. So now we are going to learn about St. Paul. This is a good one.
St. Paul is one of the most important and influential of all the saints. Many of his writings are contained in the canon of the Bible and have influenced the growth and development of the church since the 1st century. St. Paul was originally known as Saul. He was a Roman citizen and a Pharisee. He presided over the persecutions of the early Christians. However, he was duly baptized and took the name Paul. Paul traveled the world, first to Arabia, then back to Damascus. He also visited Jerusalem to see St. Peter, who was the first pope, and to pay homage to him. During these travels, he preached ceaselessly, often drawing criticism and ire from those who rebuffed his message. After establishing his churches, Paul remained in communication with the faithful, often writing letters to answer questions and resolve disputes. The letters that have survived have become part of the Bible. It is believed that Paul wrote other letters, which were lost even before the Bible was established by the church. Paul's writings are important because they provide good advice for how Christians should live. Paul traveled throughout much of Europe, particularly in Macedonia, Greece, and Italy. While preparing for a missionary trip to Spain, he was imprisoned in Caesarea by the Jews for 2 years. He traveled again, was shipwrecked in Malta, and was imprisoned for another 2 years for preaching in Rome. Despite these imprisonments, Paul continued to preach. In 67 AD, Paul was arrested in Rome for a second time, and this time he was beheaded under the insane Emperor Nero. According to John Chrysostom, Nero knew Paul personally. Paul is among the most famous, intelligent, and influential of the apostles. There are some who argue that he was the leader of the apostles, but this is not supported by the evidence. St. Paul is the patron saint of missionaries, evangelists, writers, journalists, authors, public workers, rope and saddle makers, and tent makers. His feast day is on June 29th when he is honored with St. Peter, although he is also honored on other days throughout the year. January 25th for his conversion, February 16th for his shipwreck, and November 18th for the dedication of his basilica. To learn more about St. Paul, visit Catholic.org and if St. Paul inspired...
Okay. So Paul's very, very popular in the Bible. He was the most what? What is this word that he used to describe Paul? He was the most what? INFLUENCI. Oh, yeah, and he was the most influential. You are right. So Paul has a crazy, crazy story, influential, and he has a really crazy story because he actually used to work for the Roman government. I think it was the Roman government, and he actually used to kill Christians. If you were a Christian, he would kill you and slaughter you. It's not a very good thing to be a part. His job was literally a murderer. And all of a sudden, he met Jesus himself. His life got changed, and his name used to be what? Saul. Yeah, his name used to be Saul, but he changed it to Paul when he got baptized. So his life has changed so much that he was,
It's my thing.
Yeah, exactly. There it is, right there. His life changed so much that when he was baptized, his name even changed. And so he, to churches? What did he do? He blanked churches. Fill in the blank. What did he do? Get it? S-T, okay, A-B-L-I-S. Yeah, he established churches. He would build them. And then what would he do? He would what? What was the main thing that Paul would do? Like, what is Paul known for? Yes, W-R-I-T. Yes, he would write L-E-T-T-E-R. Letters. Yeah, he would write letters. And he write letter to the churches. Like the book of Ephesians is Paul's letter. The first and so the book of Ephesians was written to the church, and then the church, like 1st and 2nd Corinthians, was written to the church in Corinth, and there was such a bad church that they needed 2 letters. I believe it's Ephesians, Corinthians, Philippians, the church in Philippi. There's many different letters that he write letters. And I kind of just gave this one away, but his letters are in the what? B-I-B. Yep. Get it. L. Yep. B-I-B-L-E. The Bible. His letters are, in fact, in the Bible. And what was he? What happened to him for preaching? What happened to him? He was what? ARR. Yeah. EST. Yeah, he was arrested for preaching. Imagine that. You go from being a Christian killer to then preaching the gospel, only to be persecuted multiple times. And he would go to jail, come right back out, and still preach again because he just loved Jesus so much. So, very inspiring. Last but not least, you just got to bear with me. I know we've been at this for about 25 minutes. We're almost done. We're going to learn about John the Apostle. And then tomorrow, with all this information we learned today, we're going to fill out this paper tomorrow. Okay? So, John the Apostle.
St. John the Apostle was one of the 12 apostles of Jesus. He was called to be an apostle by our Lord in the first year of his public ministry. St. John is considered the same person as John the Evangelist, John of Patmos, and the beloved disciple. He is the patron saint of love, loyalty, friendships, and authors. John and Peter were the only 2 apostles sent by Jesus to make preparations for the final Passover meal, the Last Supper. During the meal, John sat next to Jesus, leaning against him rather than lying along the couches. He was the only one of the 12 apostles who did not forsake the Savior in the hour of his passion. He stood faithfully at the cross where the Savior made John the guardian of his mother. After the Assumption of Mary, John traveled to Ephesus, where he was banished by Roman authorities to the Greek island of Patmos after being plunged into boiling oil in Rome and suffering no injuries. It is also said that all those who witnessed the miracle in the Colosseum were converted to Christianity. John is believed to be the longest living apostle and the only not to die a martyr's death. The beloved disciple died in Ephesus after 98 AD, where a stately church was erected over his tomb. He is known as the author of the Gospel of John and 4 other books in the New Testament, the 3 epistles of John, and the book of Revelation. St. John is often depicted in art as the author of the Gospel with an eagle, symbolizing the height he rose to in his Gospel. In other icons, he is shown looking up into heaven and dictating his Gospel to his disciples. St. John's feast day is celebrated on December 27th. For more information on St. John the Apostle, and to read more of his fun facts, please visit Catholic.org.
That was a short one. So, John was a very loyal man. He loved Jesus from the start. John blank forsake Jesus. John fill in the blank. D-I-D. And yeah, he did not forsake Jesus. Out of the several apostles that did, John was the one that did not forsake Jesus. Actually, if anything, in the Lord's Supper, he was just laying on him the whole time compared to others. And so John, just like Paul, was arrested for preaching, just being a Christian in general. There was one time where he was plummeted into hot burning oil. But what happened to him? He did not he did not get hurt, and that is a miracle. God protected him in that, and that was like a message to others, is that, God is real. If he's going to protect this man from burning oil, then he obviously is real if he's performing such miracles. Did not get hurt. And last but not least, John wrote what? He wrote 1, 2, 3, yes. Get that J. J-O-H-N. Yeah, he wrote 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. And then what's the last one that he wrote? Very important one. Yeah, R-E, red, L-E-L. Yep, A, straight to it. Slow down. A-T-I. Straight to it. Oh. Yeah. And he wrote Revelation. Okay, so tomorrow we have to work on our saint worksheet here. And I want you to pick a saint. So out of Saint Paul, Saint Joan d'Arc, Saint Peter, and Saint John, who do you want to pick? So S-A-I-N, Saint, who? Straight to it, which one? Which one? Okay, P-A-U. Yeah, there we go. All right. Okay, sounds good. We will do that and stay tuned for tomorrow.